Well, welcome into Bayou Roar on this episode. I'm going to be previewing LSU's upcoming game against the Florida Gators, as well as sharing my week three predictions for college football. But we are going to start by diving into this matchup with Florida because this is a huge game. I know for Florida, they're coming off a loss against USF. Tigers are rolling into this one 2-0, but I think there are things for both teams to prove, and there's a real chance that this is going to be a tight ball game that comes down to the wire. So I want to start with Florida because a lot of people are talking about this game from the Florida angle. Talking about, Florida's coming off that loss to USF, that they're all going to be, playing like they've got something to prove because this is the game that could end up saving their season, saving Billy Napier, all these things. And yes, Florida is going to walk into this one absolutely with trying to make sure that they win at all costs, because if they suffer a second loss within 3 weeks, I mean it's going to be an uphill battle with their schedule to get anywhere close to a college football playoff berth. It just is. I mean, it's going to be difficult from here on out to find any other way to get close to that. It just is. But honestly, Florida should already be going into this game with those kind of expectations, not just because they're coming off a loss. And that's the thing that kind of confuses me is everybody's like, well, now this LSU game means a lot more for Florida because of that loss. And it's like, it should have already meant a lot to them. I know in the college football playoff era, you can afford a loss or two here and there. I know. But like Florida should have already been hyped up for this game because you're going on the road for a primetime matchup against LSU, who you have built a big time rivalry with over the last, probably what, 15 to 20 years. And it's just like, you should already be fired up to play this game. Like, there shouldn't have to be extra motivation thrown on top of you just because you lost the game the week before. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, there's a lot of people talking about it like that as if Florida shouldn't already be excited. But then on top of that, here's the thing with the loss. Yes, Florida is going to be extra motivated to win because of that loss, because now there is no more breathing room really for them. But like, you're also not playing this game in the swamp. If we were playing this game at Florida, I'd be a little bit more nervous because, you got to go out there in front of their fans that are angry from the week before. They're going to have the backing of their crowd, which is going to want them to go out there and win. It's going to be a hostile environment. But instead, Florida's going to Baton Rouge, to Death Valley, on a night game that is sold out because it is the gold game where they're asking all of the fans to wear gold. So you're talking about 100,000 plus people in there that are not on Florida's side that are going to be cheering and hooping and hollering for LSU. Like, yes, Florida is still going to be motivated, but like the environment's not going to be in their favor because it's not their home stadium. So, like, not saying that that just completely douses the fire that's on Florida, but it's not like you're going into the swamp where it's going to continue to add and pile onto the flame that's already growing. It's going to kind of help to contain it, honestly, a little bit. But if you're LSU, you got to take advantage of that home field advantage. I mean, that's just the ultimate thing, though. And so, anyways, for this whole Florida narrative, like, yes, I get it. They're going to want to go out there and win, but we also have to kind of pump the brakes on that storyline a little bit because at the end of the day, this was already a big matchup just, so early in the year. And that is the weird thing. This game is usually not played this early, and so this is a big time matchup for early in the season because it doesn't normally happen like this. It's usually an October game, like at the earliest. So it's kind of a weird place to be playing this in just week three of the season, but it's an exciting one. And for the LSU side of things, like people aren't really talking enough about how LSU's also got to walk into this one a little bit, ready to go and a little bit fired up. Because yes, they're 2-0 and they beat Louisiana Tech last week. They had a huge win in week 1 over Clemson, but here's the thing. Now there are a lot of different storylines about LSU. Because last week you kind of fell asleep at the wheel against Louisiana Tech. You didn't play a great game. Now people are kind of wondering, oh man, did we overvalue LSU? Are they pumping the brakes on them a little bit? even your win against Clemson now that they struggled against Troy last week, people are saying maybe we overvalued both Clemson and LSU and all these things. So going into this game, if you're LSU, you absolutely need to be fired up and ready to go and to just lay the hammer down on the Gators because people are starting to doubt whether or not you really are a contender because Clemson has not looked great. And then Louisiana Tech did not make you look great. So that's just the thing. You need to come into this one on fire and ready to go just as much as Florida. And I don't think people are talking about that enough that like LSU also has plenty to prove in this game, even though they are 2-0 and have one of the biggest wins so far in the early college football season. So that's the thing going into this game. I think both teams absolutely have something to prove, which should mean this is going to be a great game. But there are things that I think LSU can do, both offensively and defensively, to help give them the edge in this one. So we're going to start with the offense. And the first thing that I have is no turnovers. Last year, this was a game that really did get decided by just some poor turnovers by LSU. The thing is LSU, if you go back and look at the box score from the Florida game last year, LSU pretty much was ahead in every category, including time of possession, where LSU had the ball for like 42 minutes in that ball game. But what killed them was one, they absolutely got blown up by the Florida defensive line. I mean, that Florida defensive line wreaked havoc last year. And then two, you just made some big mistakes along the way that cost you the opportunity to put yourself ahead and to keep them at bay. And so going into this one, if you're, Joe Sloan, if you're Brian Kelly, your whole message to the offense is we cannot shoot ourselves in the foot. No stupid turnovers and honestly no bad penalties. Like you will probably get a penalty here or there. It's just how football is, but if you by all means can help it, no stupid penalties, no false starts, nothing like that. You want to make sure that by all the ways possible that you can, that you are able to be in control of this ball game when you have the ball and not giving the ball to them and not committing those penalties that will give them momentum is going to help a lot with that. So that is kind of the first big offensive key is just do not turn the ball over because here's the thing, they are a team that can take advantage of that. I think it's a no doy in every game you don't want to have turnovers, but especially in this one. This is one where you can't afford an underthrown ball to Berrien Brown that gets picked off. You just cannot have that happen against Florida, knowing that, Florida's offense, I know has got some issues, but, they're an SEC team with a 5-star caliber quarterback. They could go put up some points. So no turnovers is a must for this one. And also just, talking about what happened last year again, the O-line this year has got to be excellent in both its run blocking and pass blocking against this Florida defensive line. In both areas, you have to be absolutely outstanding because this Florida defensive line, while it's not the same as last year's because they've lost some pieces on that line, they've still got a lot of really top tier talent, and they're getting another one back on Saturday. Caleb Banks, who has not played in the first two games for Florida this year, is going to be returning to the defensive line on Saturday for this LSU game. Now, he is coming off an injury, so it's one of those things of is he going to be fully healthy? Will he actually play the entire time? We don't know. But what we do know is that he is back, and he is one of the best defensive linemen in the country when he is healthy and playing. So this is not like, even if he's only, 70%, he's still going to be really, really good. And, the good thing is for LSU, you've already faced some really good defensive linemen when you played Clemson in game one. So, like, you've played high caliber defensive linemen and you showed that you can come up with a strategy for blocking and holding them off pretty well, guys that are at that caliber. But you've got multiple of them on this Florida defensive line that are really good. Now, you've also got some favor. There are some that are also banged up that won't be playing in this one. But overall, the front seven for Florida is really, really solid. Like that is the most solid part of their defense. And so for LSU's offensive line, this is also the week to prove that you can shed some of the disbelief in what you're able to do by going out there and putting a hat on a hat, run blocking really well, and also standing tall and pass protection for Garrett Nussmeier. Like this is a week that you can prove a lot about yourself by having a really good game. So the offensive line, though, they have got to play probably their best game yet. And the good news is for LSU's offensive line is it looks like Braylon Moore is going to end up playing in this game. Now, on the official injury report that was released, he is still listed as questionable. But in Brian Kelly's press conference, just as of today, Thursday, when I'm recording this, he did say that Braylon Moore took all of the first team snaps at practice, and he's looking like he's going to be ready to go for Saturday night. So obviously, that ankle injury was not as severe as maybe first thought, which it wasn't even that severe to begin with, but it does look like Braylon Moore is going to be back, and that is a huge plus for this LSU offensive line because you get a key leader back on your O line that's going to make sure that you're in the right positions, you're in the right places, and you got what you need to get going and to play well. So Braylon Moore being back is going to be a huge piece to this, but again, Braylon, you can have Braylon Moore all night or not. Even if it was DJ Chester playing, the point still remains. The offensive line last year for LSU, which featured four guys who got drafted in the NFL, struggled against the Florida defensive line. And you have got to be able to withstand them in both run blocking and pass blocking if you're going to have success. Which now leads to the next point, which is this. Yes, you do need to win in both phases, but here's the thing, while you do want to balance the offense between the run and the pass, obviously, as much as you can, this is a game where you can kind of flex your bigger advantage, which is your wide receiver depth. Because, like I mentioned, the front seven is really formidable for Florida. Like, that is going to be the best part of their defense. But their secondary is where it's a little bit thinner and not as secure. They've got some good guys back there in the secondary. I'm not trying to say that they're a bunch of scrubs, but definitely they don't have the horses to just race with you all night long. So if you're LSU, man, if you can go out there and you can throw out multiple different formations with multiple different, receivers, and like we talked about, LSU has got a whole roster of just completely different types of receivers too. You've got your Xavion guys that are like gadgety and can do all these different things. You've got your Aaron Anderson, who's just a really good like guy that can get underneath, do the dirty work, grab the big time receptions. You've also got Chris Hilton, who can be your deep ball threat. You've got Barry and Brown, which, man, if you get that man the ball out in space, he can turn it real quick for a big time play. Like LSU's got a whole lot of different style of receivers that they can throw at Florida all night long. And I don't know if Florida has the depth in their secondary to really keep up with an attack like that. It's just going to be up to, again, the offensive line allowing Garrett Nussmeier enough time to set some of those things up. Even the quicker game, which they showed against Clemson, if they do that again against Florida, while that could really work, you still got to have time to set those things up. So, while yes, you do want to balance the offense, I think LSU can have a similar attack like they had against Clemson, where they're using quick pass plays to just really kind of back the defense off a little bit. And that's the thing. Yes, you want to run the ball, but at the same time, you got to use your strength against their weakness, which, their weakness is going to be more of their secondary than their front seven. So attack the weakness rather than trying to force it against their strength. I think that's going to be huge for LSU to be able to pull out ahead in this ball game is Garrett Nussmeier being able to get the ball to these playmakers and allow them to do their thing, especially when you have such an advantage in that spot. Now, I think for LSU also, you can't walk into this game with a very vanilla game plan. Like, you cannot walk into this one, especially looking like what you did last week against Louisiana Tech, which just looked like a very straightforward, like, plan of attack. Nothing really too crazy. But against Clemson, what you saw was a lot of really creative stuff. One play that they did several times that worked out well was making it look like the running back was about to go out for a screen in motion, and then you would actually make it a wide receiver screen with a receiver coming into the middle. And that was the kind of creative stuff that wasn't like overly done, but just like little things like that that Clemson wasn't expecting ended up hurting them for a lot of yards. We talked about it on our post game reaction against Clemson, but the Jawan Johnson play, where they had a formation where Jawan Johnson kept catching a screen pass over and over and over again until Clemson finally guarded it. I mean, just even things like that were effective against Clemson. So can you come up with more stuff like that to throw at this Florida defense that maybe they're not expecting? Some more gadget type stuff with Barry and Brown, which you did show against Louisiana Tech. Some more gadget type stuff for Xavier Thomas. Can you keep evolving this offense with some more wrinkles where they're not overly complex, but they could be really, really effective? I want to see LSU do that against Florida on Saturday night because I just think Florida, if you walk in there with a very vanilla, bland type of approach, Florida's going to take advantage and they're going to just absolutely wipe the floor with you. So, all that being said, I want to see LSU throw out some stuff that's going to confuse Florida using motions, all those good things, because you've got the playmakers to kind of put that pressure on them, utilize that really well. And then once again, this is another game where Nuss is going to have to outduel another quarterback. Just like he had to outduel Cade Klubnik in week one on the road against Clemson, he is going to have to outduel DJ Lagway on Saturday night in this ball game. Now, that again, that does not mean statistically, Nussmeier's got to throw 300 if, DJ Lagway throws 250 or whatever. But if Nussmeier leaves this game with, let's say, two touchdown passes and no picks and no fumbles or anything like that, but DJ Lagway throws a pick and has a fumble or something like that, then Nuss won that battle. Yes, you also want to be competitive. Like if DJ's throwing 230, you want Nuss to throw 240. You want to be close, but like it's the turnovers, it's the decision making. Can Nuss be, a higher completion percentage than DJ Lagway? Can his throws just be of better quality than DJ Lagway's throughout the night? That's going to be the difference once again, is if Nuss can win this quarterback battle. Because here's the thing, DJ Lagway, I know he's had his ups and his downs, but he is a former five-star quarterback. He is going to have that kind of talent where he could end up helping his team to win a game. So, that's the thing is yes, DJ Legway hasn't always looked perfect, but he is capable. And so for Nuss, he's got to be on absolutely 100%. He cannot back off even a little bit. You got to block out all the stuff that happened against Louisiana Tech and now move into Saturday night with a brand new mentality. So if he can do that, LSU's got a great chance in this ball game. But offensively, man, that's just the keys in my mind that they got to have to winning this one. Now, when it comes to defensively, obviously this is where LSU has improved the most heading into this matchup this year. Last year, that defense was by that point still a big piece of work. They'd had some really good games, but by the time they played Florida, they'd also got beaten up quite a bit, and Florida absolutely took advantage of that. And Florida absolutely, even with an injured DJ Lagway who had a hamstring problem, was able to, move the ball just enough to get points on the board to pull ahead and win that game. So this year, obviously, LSU's defense has made a huge turnaround. And again, playing them early in the year, you got, healthy guys on the team. Like, by all means, you are in a much better position. And here's the thing, Florida's offense is also one of those that I feel like, while yes, they've got some talent, LSU can also kind of flex their muscle defensively a little bit against them because, DJ Lagway, while he is a very high level quarterback, he's got potential out the roof in my mind. He also has proven that there are some parts to his game that he's still working on. He's very inconsistent with his performances. He has been. And so there's some games where yeah, he'll look dialed in, he'll look great, but there's other games where he hasn't put it all together. And so in this one, how you approach DJ Lagway is going to be huge because here's the thing, Lagway is a quarterback that is mobile, what I like to call mobile-ish. Like, yes, Lagway has the potential to run, and he will run when needed, and he can be relied upon to run from time to time. But that's not the type of game that DJ Lagway wants to play. DJ Lagway, by all means, does not want to have to run all the time. He wants to stand in the pocket and throw the ball. But he is mobile enough to escape and to pick up yards, all those things, much like Cade Klubnik. And so in this game, do you have a similar approach like you had to Klubnik, where you're using your spies, guys like Whit Weeks, guys like Harold Perkins? Obviously, that's going to be a huge part in this one. Do you let Devon Keys be a spy from time to time? Like, who do you use to kind of help spy? Because in my mind, that is going to be something that maybe you don't have to use every single play, but you do need to have a guy alert enough to say, hey, if he even looks like he's about to take off, I'm running right at him and going to get him. Because while he maybe won't burn you like a Jalen Milroe or Marcel Reed, he still can be effective in picking up first downs and things like that. So, you do got to be careful with DJ Lagway, but he's not a type of guy where they're just going to absolutely have him outrun you the whole time. That's just not his game. So, with that being said, with Lagway, can you create enough pressure where he's not escaping the pocket, but you're rushing him internally? Because again, he does have a tendency sometimes to kind of force some stuff. And especially with a receiving core, as we're going to talk about here in just a second, that's got some pieces, but they haven't really proven themselves yet to this point to be like super reliable targets. Can you rush his clock enough to make him go, oh, shoot, I got to get the ball out and start making mistakes and start doing things that he doesn't want to do? Because in my mind, if you can do that, you're going to get a huge leg up. Because DJ Lagway, again, he doesn't want to do the thing that could be effective against you, which is using his legs all the time. He just does not want to do that. But if you can force him to being uncomfortable the whole time, you're going to take away the things that he does want to do, which is to sit back in the pocket and throw the ball. And if you can get him off his platform, if you can get him, scrambling around a little bit, making him uncomfortable, then you can open up yourself to force some mistakes, force some interceptions, potentially force some fumbles here and there. Like, you can start to force those things if you can make DJ Lagway uncomfortable. Like, you got to make it difficult for him to read those things. Now, the thing is, Florida does have a pretty decent offensive line. They returned four of their five starters from last year, and while they're not like the perfect unit by all means, they are a pretty solid unit. And this is a game where this defensive line is going to have to win their matchups because I don't think you can just blitz all night long. Florida likes to use quick screens from what I've seen. In that USF game, it felt like they were running screens a lot. A lot, a lot, a lot. Both with the running backs, with the receivers, lots of screens. And from somebody I was listening to, they said even against Long Island, it looked like they were just trying to set up a lot of screens. Now, were they trying not to show their full hand, against Long Island and USF? I don't know. But all I know is even when that game was getting tight against USF, they were still running screenplays. So I don't know if that's just a part of this offense that they're trying to do or whatever. But I think there's going to have to be times where, if they're going to try to move quick, kind of like what you have done, against good pass rushes, you can't just blitz all night long because you're going to leave yourself vulnerable to potentially some plays. So can this defensive line win their matchups, put the pressure on Lagway, and make him, again, rush that clock and make some mistakes? This is a game where the defensive line, the front four, have to step up the most. Now, the good thing is they got the dogs to do it this year. They've got the Florida transfer, Jack Pyburn, who's been playing excellent. You got Patrick Payton, the Florida State transfer, that's been playing outstanding. Gabe Relaford has had some really good games to start the year. You've also got a great rotation of defensive tackles with Don McKinley. You've got Bernard Gooden. You've got, Ahmad Bro. Like, you've got the guys, to create some havoc with just the front four. And we've seen that both against Clemson and Louisiana Tech, that just the front four is capable enough of doing the right things and making the plays. So can they continue to do that against this offensive line against Florida that, well, yes, maybe isn't the most talented offensive line in the world. They do have a lot of veteran experience on the line. And so can they handle their assignments? I think that's going to be huge because, man, if you don't have to blitz all the time and you can kind of help to cover out those screens and things like that, that's going to make your night a whole lot easier in trying to contain this offense. So the defensive line has got to win their assignments to the point where Blake Baker doesn't feel like he has to dial up exotic pressures all the time. Because every now and again, I think that's going to work like it did against Klubnik, where on the first drive, PJ Woodland just basically strolls in and gets a sack. Like, I don't think Klubnik was expecting that kind of a blitz to come on a third down on the first series. So, yes, you're going to dial up those things every now and again because it's not going to be what Lagway expects. It's not going to be what Florida is necessarily looking for sometimes. But you don't want to have to do that all the time because eventually they will catch on and they will find ways to exploit that. So, can you win up front to where you don't have to do that over and over and over again? I think if they can do that, they can start to do some really, really good things defensively. So, you know, that is going to be a big advantage I think LSU could have is an improved front four making a huge impact, more than obviously what they were able to do last year. So that is another key defensively for me. And then really, I mean, if you can take away this run game as a whole, if your front seven can really take away the running part of this offensive attack, which they do have two really good running backs. That's the thing. Florida does feature two running backs that have got, a ton of talent to them. And I could see a world where, they're trying to rely upon them to move the ball. They're trying to use them to, get things going. And that's, Jaden Baugh and Jacoby Jackson. Like, those are two veteran guys, a sophomore and a senior, that had good 2024 seasons. They're formidable runners, all those good things. But man, this rush defense for LSU is not the rush defense they played a year ago. While they were able to kind of take advantage of LSU's rush defense last year, this is a completely different unit. Like I said, this defensive line is playing a lot better. Just from their perspective, they've improved a ton. But also, you've got Harold Perkins, you've got the Weeks brothers, you've got Devon Keys. Your linebacking room is a lot better too. So, can you go out there, shut down that run game, and force Florida to maybe go against the grain if they really are trying to do more of a quick offense built off of screens and short passes and all that? Can you force them to try to push the ball further than that because they have to? Like if you can do that, I mean the game is basically in your hands. Because I mean, let's be completely honest, this LSU defense has been one of the best units in the country so far through two games. Yes, I know they played Tech last week, but Tech didn't have a shot in the world until that final drive when some of the backups were in to even score the ball, let alone move the ball on LSU. And you saw in that second half against Clemson, I mean, LSU put the clamps down and they did not let Clemson breathe the entire second half. So, like, this LSU defense is extremely, extremely good. And this will be a huge test to their mettle, too. Because, man, there's going to be people that, after Louisiana Tech and Clemson, like I said, kind of pumping the brakes on, man, is this defense really that good? Or just was Clemson bad? Yeah, this defense is really good, but they played Louisiana Tech. This defense ought to come out on fire and just put the belt down to them and just absolutely hold them in place, which I hope is true. I hope that is the case for the LSU defense on Saturday night against Florida because at the end of the day, this is going to be probably the game that really solidifies for a lot of people what LSU is. In my mind, if LSU struggles against Florida, I think there's going to be a lot of people really pumping the brakes on this team because Florida's, like I said, they're coming off that loss. They're already in a bad position for a lot of people. So there's going to be a lot of people if LSU struggles in this one that dismisses LSU as being like maybe not a playoff contender, but being a really serious national championship level team. But if LSU comes in to Baton Rouge on Saturday night and handles business, I mean, they have a chance to really solidify their run as not just a playoff team, as a championship caliber team. So, it's all going to come down to those keys, though. Can on both sides of the ball, can you really flex your muscle, force them to do things that they don't want to do, and use your advantages against their weaknesses? Like if you can, I mean, I know that's very simple, but like if you can take advantage of those things, you got a chance to win this one. And LSU's line for this one has shrunk a little bit. They were a 9.5 point favorite. Now they are a 7 point favorite. So I guess it's time for me to share my thoughts on the score. And man, as much as I don't want to necessarily be a touchdown favorite per se, I don't necessarily hate that line for LSU. I do think this is going to be a game that is probably a little bit closer. Probably makes people sweat a little bit. Again, Florida is coming in fired up, but I think at the end of the day, I'm obviously going to pick LSU to win this one. I picked them in my preseason prediction to win this one against Florida. I'm going to have them winning it 34-27, keeping that touchdown spread. that is I think that's a pretty solid. So 34-27, LSU gets the big win against Florida at home. I know Florida's not in the top 25 anymore, but listen, I'm still considering this to be a huge game because Florida still has got some talent and they still can be an absolute pain in the side if you lose this one. So, LSU, though, I got winning 34-27. So now we're going to take a look at the rest of the big week 3 matchups, and I'll let you know what I think about how those are going to go. Tiger fans, we know you bleed purple and gold. And if you're looking for the gear that shows it off in style, you've got to check out Bengals and Bandits. This isn't your average team shop. Bengals and Bandits is locally owned and packed with unique LSU-inspired apparel, hats, and accessories you won't find anywhere else. Whether you're headed to Death Valley on Saturday night, tailgating with friends, or just repping your Tigers around town, they've got you covered. Every piece is designed with that Louisiana flair we all love. Bold, stylish, and perfect for showing your Tiger pride year round. So next time you're in Baton Rouge, swing by Bengals and Bandits or check them out online to grab your new favorite game day fit. That's Bengals and Bandits, where Tiger fans shop to stand out from the crowd. So week 3 for college football has got a great lineup for us. Last week, we ended up having what ended up being a lot of really fun games, as we talked about in our week 2 recap. But I won't lie, there was a certain point of the day where I was just like, oh man, this is tough, especially like at that 11 a.m. time slot. But week 3 already, man, we're walking into this one with some great, great games going on, and I didn't even think it was worth talking about all of them. I mean, so I've got 4 games I really want to highlight here, but there's plenty of games on Saturday that look like they're going to be really, really good. But we're going to start with Clemson versus Georgia Tech. And look, for Clemson, man, they are walking into this one absolutely licking their wounds. Listen, it's one thing to struggle against a lower tier opponent. I mean, LSU struggled against Louisiana Tech last week. But they went up against Troy, sorry. And they, I mean, not only struggled, they were losing to Troy, losing pretty badly to Troy at halftime, and had to come back to win that one. So there's a lot of people right now that are absolutely doubting Clemson big time. And then now they have to go on the road at 11 a.m. to take on a Georgia Tech team that, man, Georgia Tech, maybe isn't the most talented team in the world, but man, Georgia Tech is tough. I mean, they are tough minded. They are just a gritty team. Like, they are a team that honestly, I have come to love over the last couple years. I just love what they've got going on over there in Atlanta. I think Georgia Tech is a lot of fun, honestly, to watch week in and week out, even though, yes, a lot of their offense is running and Haynes King, being effective with his legs and all that. It's not the most exciting stuff in the world, but man, is it just really fun to watch, because it's just old school smash mouth football. And the thing is this is an 11 a.m. kickoff, so this is going to be an early game on the road at Georgia Tech, and I can see this one going multiple ways. On the one hand, I could see this being a game where Clemson kind of wakes up finally a little bit and says, okay, we cannot let this one slip. We have got to keep going, and we have got to win this one, even if it takes everything we've got. We have got to win this one to keep our season pretty much alive at this point. And then I can also see a world where Georgia Tech makes this one, I mean, just absolutely super tight, goes down to the wire, and it's a coin flip on who wins. I mean, I can see both realities definitely happening because here's the thing on paper, Clemson really should kind of, especially with their offensive talent, Cade Klubnik, Brian Wesco Jr., and, if Antonio Williams plays, I mean, they should be able to kind of run away with this game for sure. But that's the thing, you know, I don't know if that's going to necessarily be the case on Saturday. Right now, Clemson is a 3-point favorite on the road, but I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be bold here with this one. I'm going to take Georgia Tech. I'm going to pick Georgia Tech to upset Clemson in Atlanta on Saturday. I just think for some reason, after Clemson got not just beaten by LSU, but I mean, I talked about it earlier. They got absolutely shut down by LSU in that second half. And I think that really took a lot out of them because they just look. Now, look, there was a whole lot of factors last weekend that did not work in Clemson's favor for sure, from the weather to obviously you're playing a really physical game in week one. Now you got to play a mid-afternoon game against, a smaller opponent. Like, yeah, there's a lot of things that factored in. And then look, again, LSU didn't play a great game, but they were in control the whole time at least. They were never in doubt of winning that one, but that's the thing. Is Clemson not only did look bad, I mean they just look defeated. They don't look like they are firing on all cylinders. And I think going up against a Georgia Tech team that is really well coached, that is going to cross, all the T's, dot all the I's, they're going to make sure all the details are lined up for them. I just don't think Clemson's in a really great position here in this ball game. And so I am going to put the favor into the hands of the rambling wreck from Georgia Tech. And I got Georgia Tech winning this one. Now this could be flat out wrong. That's just where I'm leaning to. So, got Georgia Tech taking this one. Now, we stay with teams that are in Georgia, and we have Georgia versus Tennessee. This is going to be another great matchup in the SEC on this day. And, of course, Tennessee, you know, has not really played anybody too great so far. Syracuse ended up kind of hanging around and, giving them quite the game. Tennessee's offense has looked really explosive, though, in the first two games. And now you have to play a game against Georgia. And Georgia walks into this one against Tennessee. Gunnar Stockton's played all right. Frazier, their running back, has done well. Zechariah Branch, who a lot of people had a lot of high hopes for coming into the year. Yes, he's also played well, but here's the thing. They also struggled against Austin Peay last week. Maybe factors in that one, whether all that played a part, but they did not look great against Austin Peay. And here's the thing with Georgia that's different in my mind than like with LSU that struggled against Louisiana Tech and all, and some of these other places. The thing is with Georgia, I just don't really trust anything about their offense right now. Maybe outside of Zechariah Branch because he was a pretty good receiver coming in to Georgia. I still think he's obviously got that talent, but here's the difference like between an LSU that struggled against a smaller opponent in Georgia. I don't trust Gunnar Stockton. There's nothing about him that really screams like he's that great of a quarterback to me. I trust a Nussmeier. I trust a Lenora Sellers more. I'd even trust DJ Lagway more than Gunnar Stockton right now. Gunnar Stockton to me just doesn't really have it. And I don't know how much success Georgia can really have this year with him being the quarterback. I just don't. Like, maybe he is better than Carson Beck. I don't know. Maybe the bar was really low with Carson Beck. But I just don't see Gunnar Stockton being that guy. Even a guy like, Stetson Bennett, that, yes, wasn't like this incredible quarterback prospect, but I don't even see him being able to manage games in the same way that like Stetson did. And so that's the thing with Stockton. This is going to be a game where he's going to have to prove himself a little bit. This is his first big challenge. And does he live up to the call in Neyland and come away with the win? That's going to be a big test. And then on the other side for Tennessee, the thing is this offense really legit? Yeah, Aguilar's put up some numbers. This offense has put up some numbers, but you played like I don't even know, like East Tennessee State or something last week, and then you played, obviously Syracuse in week one, which was a different challenge, but still not nearly at the same level like as what you're about to face against this Georgia defense. And so in my mind, I kind of flip back and forth with this one too, just because I don't really trust either team. I don't really trust Tennessee, but I also don't really trust Georgia, you know. And at the end of the day, it's a 4-point spread in favor of Georgia. I am going to stick with Georgia just because it's one of those things of I think defensively they're going to be really, really good. And I think that defense could potentially shut down the Tennessee offense enough for Georgia to win. I just do. I think a really good defense can even hide the flaws of potentially a Gunnar Stockton. And so with that being said, I do have Georgia winning this one, but really in my mind this is going to be a coin flip game. I mean, I really could see it going either way. There's a world where I think Tennessee could win, where maybe their offense does end up holding up more than we expect. But I just think the Tennessee defense this year is not quite at the same level as it was last year. And so I think, with Georgia having a really good defense, even with some offensive deficiencies, I still think they can shut down Tennessee enough to put some points up on the board and win. But again, I don't trust really either of these teams moving forward from this game either. I don't think either one of these teams leaving this game is really in that great of a position to do much in the SEC after this, but I do believe Georgia will take this one on Saturday on the road at Neyland, which now leads us to man, the teams of the one of the teams of the year so far. South Florida going on the road to take Miami. Now, the funny part is that South Florida is actually in Tampa, which is not South Florida. I don't know why they call themselves that, but they are really going to South Florida to play Miami. And look, Miami, obviously they didn't really play anybody last week. They played like Bethune Cookman or something like that. And then they beat Notre Dame week one. And it was a really good ball game, but they ended up pulling it out. Miami enters this one as a 17.5 point favorite. And boy, have I read that storyline before. Just last week, South Florida went up against another 17.5 point spread. And they ended up not just beating the spread, but they beat the team that had that spread. And look, listen, I would love to say South Florida is going to do it again. I really would. But I think in this ball game, the difference is this. I think Miami, with the weapons that they have offensively and Carson Beck, they proved against Notre Dame they can move the ball pretty well. They can pass the ball well. And that was a game where it was raining really hard. And so they passed the ball really well in a game like that. They can run the ball well. I think this is a different type of attack they're going to see than what Florida put up a week ago. And South Florida, while yes, I do believe they'll make this a tight ball game again. Again, I don't really trust the spread at 17 and a half. Like I think South Florida can keep this thing close. I think South Florida can compete, and keep, the game closer than it is, but I think Miami obviously is coming into this one with a little bit of an advantage. They saw now South Florida beat up on Florida the week before and win that game. Like they know not to sleep on them. Kind of like what happened with Vanderbilt last year. Everybody saw Vanderbilt beat Alabama, and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, now Alabama or now Vanderbilt, sorry, is on the radar. And nobody really slept on Vanderbilt the rest of the year. Nobody's really sleeping on Vanderbilt going into this year. And so that is kind of the thing is like now South Florida's gotten that big win. Miami's not just going to be aloof to that and just kind of meander their way around. I do think Miami wins this ball game. I just don't think it's a 17 and a half point win. So I would expect maybe 10 points, maybe as a pretty good chance that Miami wins by, but I don't see 17 and a half. But I mean, I could be wrong. I just know the way South Florida plays, where they run the ball a lot, where they take off a lot of clock, it's just like scoring opportunities just don't come all the time against South Florida. And so that's why I just don't think it's going to be like a 17 and a half point ball game. But Miami, I have winning as well. And then now we move on to the last game on the list, which is Texas A&M versus Notre Dame, where Notre Dame is a 6.5 point favorite. Now last year, this was a ball game that really probably helped Notre Dame the most because that game last year ended up being very, very important for Notre Dame's run because eventually they would go on to lose to Northern Illinois, and it looked like the season was over. It really did. Like it looked like their season was done. But the fact that Notre Dame had gotten a 23-13 victory over Texas A&M early in the year on the road at College Station against an Aggies team that at that time looked like they could be really good. Connor Wegman at quarterback, things like that. Then, of course, Wegman didn't really ever work out the way he was supposed to or whatever. But still, you get a big win on the road against an SEC opponent. That really helped save a lot of face for Notre Dame, even with the Northern Illinois loss. And of course, they ended up riding that wave to a national championship appearance. So for Notre Dame this year, this is another game where I think they're going to be on high alert. They're going to be at their place. Now, A&M's coming in with a roster that's feeling really confident. Marcel Reed is apparently really back to being healthy. The last time I saw him the week before, he was getting walked off the field, banged up against whatever small school they played against. But Marcel Reed enters this matchup, and Marcel Reed is an interesting case because he's a very athletic quarterback. He is very fast, as LSU fans know really well. He's hard to take down. He's very slippery. He can get it out to these weapons, and they've got pretty good weapons around him. Le'Veon Moss is a phenomenal running back for them. They got, I think, Casey Concepcion is one of their receivers, and he is really, really good. But here's the thing for me at the end of the day when looking at this ball game. Yes, Texas A&M's got a lot of talent and they're pretty good on both sides of the ball. But for me, even with a freshman quarterback for Notre Dame and CJ Carr, they played Miami really tough in their first game despite the loss. I think with this being at home, I think what it comes down to is this for me. As good as Marcel Reed is at running, he doesn't impress me passing wise. When the ball comes out of his hand when he's throwing, it's not like it's the worst in the world, but it's not pretty. A lot of times the throws are behind people. A lot of times just the ball comes out just not looking like a very tight spiral or anything like that. Like his passing is just not quite all there in my mind. It's not developed to the point yet where I can really consider him to be a very, very great dual threat guy. And so for me, in my mind, man, Marcus Freeman is going to find a way defensively to scheme something up against him, much like they did Connor Wegman, where they pretty much took him away. Not that Wegman was this big time explosive athlete like Marcel Reed is, but I don't think Marcel Reed is a complete quarterback up to this point of his career. And as good as, again, as good of an athlete as he is and all those things, I just think Notre Dame can find a way to not make him as big of an X factor as I think people are thinking he could be in this one. And so I have Notre Dame winning this one flat out. And I just think it's because I think Freeman will come up with a defensive strategy to take out the biggest X factor for the offense for A&M, which is Marcel Reed and his legs. And I think if you force Marcel Reed to throw the ball, it's going to be a long, long night for A&M. So I got Notre Dame winning, which means I got Georgia Tech, Georgia, Miami, Notre Dame as my winners for the big four games in my mind on Saturday across college football in week 3. But again, could be wrong. I've had some ups and some downs so far this season picking games, but liking this spread just from the fun standpoint. So hoping it turns out to be a great weekend of college football here for us in week 3. But let me know what you guys think. You can follow us on Instagram or at Twitter at Bayou Roar Pod. I would love to hear from you all what you guys think about the Florida LSU game, what your score is for that one. Let me know what you think about the biggest games of this weekend. What is your pick as maybe a sleeper game that we're all not talking about that could end up being great? Is there a game I didn't mention today that you think is going to be a lot better than that? I mean, Alabama plays Wisconsin, things like that. Like, let us know at Bayou Roar Pod again on Instagram or Twitter. Would love to interact with you. Hey, we are also on YouTube, so if you want to like and subscribe there, I would greatly appreciate that as well. And if you just share this podcast with your friends, man, wherever you get it from, that would also be great, great, great. But hey, I hope you guys have an awesome weekend this weekend watching some college football. And of course, let's go Tigers.